Now moving on to the Second Amendment and certain lawmakers that are taking a direct assault on your right to concealed carry. I'm speaking specifically of Senator Charlie Rangel out of New York. Senator Rangel, who has armed security himself, said that's perfectly fine. It's just not all right if you do. Now, we have a small clip of Rangel and his attitude about this, his rationale. Take a look.
Well, I should say the uber wealthy who have protection, had that protection, but individuals who are law-abiding citizens in your district should not. Let's talk about that.
Well, law-abiding citizens just shouldn't have to carry a gun. You know that, so you're not going to push me in that direction.
But you're protected by guns all over the place here in the Capitol.
Well, that's a little different. I think we need to be protected down here.
Now, we basically heard him give the argument for why it's okay for him to keep himself safe, just not you. He's very troubled with people in his district having guns. He says, we don't need that many guns. I don't know that briberies were involved in getting guns. He's talking about a specific case here, and I'll reference that in a second. And that is wrong, but overall, it's difficult to get a concealed weapon permit, and I'm glad to hear it. Now, we're speaking of the same Senator Rangel that was under an ethics committee investigation. He was found guilty of 11 violations surrounding personal finance and campaign finance. We're talking about a veteran senator here who, by all accounts, unethical. Let me translate that. If he were a citizen, a regular citizen, not a senator, committing the same acts of fraud, if you will, he'd be in jail. So he'd actually be a criminal. But because he's a senator, he was only dragged before the ethics committee, censored, nothing really happened to him. But it's okay if he is guarded with armed guards, just not you. You don't have a right to protect yourself. How do you like that? One corrupt senator saying that people don't have a basic right to the Second Amendment. Now, he echoes a sentiment that many lawmakers across the board, federally, state lawmakers, they feel. I want to get to that in a second, but talking about states for a second. States like Maryland, California, the District of Columbia, in fact, their firearms permitting approval requirements, they're very stringent. You have to give good cause to have a firearm in places like that, despite 37,000 issued licenses, including people like Mr. Rangel, for example, those who guard him, prominent business leaders, elected officials, judges and attorneys, they're fine. But the rest of us, we need to show a very good reason why we need that kind of protection. Now, Rangel isn't the only member on the Hill to be very anti-gun. Senator Feinstein has made some pretty remarkable statements regarding the Second Amendment herself. I brought a clip just for you. Take a look.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't here.
So it's okay for lawmakers to be guarded, but little law-abiding peons like you and I, we have no right to the Second Amendment. Now, this troubling sentiment, it's echoed on the state level as well. We saw Hawaii pass a bill. It went through their House successfully. It went on their governor's desk to sign. This bill was sponsored by Senator Will Sparrow about gun control, and what he wants to do, every law-abiding citizen in the state of Hawaii that has a firearm, he wants to put them in an FBI criminal database, which Hawaii is doing pretty successfully. That means even if you've never committed a crime, never had an issue before, you just have a firearm, you're now on the FBI. You're on an FBI list. They're watching you in a criminal database. Now, Hawaii would be the first state where residents who own firearms would be in a federal criminal records database. Now, we've heard a lot this past week about no fly, no buy, and this arbitrary no-fly list that is executed at random, if you will. We're not really certain how somebody gets on it, but what we are sure about is if once you're on it, it is nearly impossible to get off of it. And that type of power, that type of secrecy, they're wanting to tie somebody who's on that do not fly list to a no buy list. So not only are they arbitrarily on a no fly list, but they also can't buy a gun for whatever reason. With all this information, it looks like the Second Amendment is under assault, but it's good to know at least our lawmakers, they practice what they preach, right? I'm Margaret Howe reporting for Infowars.com.